I've been using Airtable for 5 years now, since 2020, and in this video I'll share with you 7 tips on how to make the most out of Airtable and make the best decisions as you're building an infrastructure within Airtable. I scale businesses to multiple 6 and 7 figures with systems, and I've been using Airtable every single day since 2020. So the first tip that I want to share with you is data structure. You need to make sure that as you're building on Airtable, you have the right data structure. That means you are not merging irrelevant information or somehow relevant information. Let me give you an example. As you can see here on my screen, I have this database on Airtable. And you can see here we're tracking the properties, the clients, the replies, the deals, and the requests. Someone could say that a deal is pretty much an outcome of a request, so I could potentially merge those. Well, while I could do this from a user perspective, it is not really comfortable to go and see all the requests as well as the deals in one place, because the people who are going to work with deals, they don't necessarily care to see the requests. So you need to think about the user as well as the data as you're scaling. My clients make multiple 6 and 7 figures per month. So if I were to have the requests, which could be hundreds, if not thousands every month, and I track them in the same place as the deals, then I'm not really helping them because they would have multiple views here on the side and they would have irrelevant requests that are not really helpful on the day-to-day. So this is the first tip, and I need you to pay attention to this as you're scaling because you need to think of it this way. Right now, you may have 10 records over here on the request or 20, but over time, you're going to have hundreds, if not thousands, every month and every year. The next tip I have for you is the following. I need you to create a view called testing, use me, or you can call it flexi view. The reason for that is because users will want to potentially go in here on Airtable and they want to hide fields or they want to show fields in a certain way. For example, maybe they are wanting to add a filter over here or sort data. Now, I create this testing view so my users and my clients don't have to create multiple views every single time and turning this into like a mess. They could go in here and like duplicate it and then forget their settings or even change their settings right here. Yes, I could also lock the view right here, but sometimes I want to make changes like this or maybe hide a field over time. So I don't want to have to deal with all of this, but instead I tell my clients like, hey, in every table that you're creating on Airtable, create a view called testing use me, where all the users can just go here. They can add whatever filters they want. They don't have to clean after themselves. They can just leave it as is because we all understand that this is a flexi view or a testing view where you can test, you can filter, you can hide and do whatever you like there. So if you want to avoid the issue of like having so many views and people going in and duplicating things and just leaving the wrong settings on a view that says all clients, but now we see only the offboarded clients, then just create a view called testing use me and instruct your users to go and use that view for testing purposes. My third tip is the input table. Some of my clients have a hard time understanding what is the purpose of the input table, but I'm going to explain to you in short. The input table is some sort of index or like a directory. What you're doing here is that you're adding information. For example, you could add all your offers or services right here. You could add any other like drop-downs. And the reason why you're adding them here on the input and not directly on a table as a single select or multiple select, it's because potentially this list of offers, right? Let's say I have 3 offers now, but then in the future I have a 4th offer. I start selling also websites. Now I have to go on Airtable on each and every single table and add a new drop-down. But if I have an input table and over here I just simply add the website builds and I just have it as the 4th option, now because I use a linked field, this is automatically updated. So that makes it really easy for me to update all the tables without having to go on each and every drop-down and add the option. So I use the input table when I know that there is going to be data added or removed over time and it's going to be on multiple places. It could be on your client database or it could be on your team database or your HR. So try to be mindful of situations where the data changes often. So in that sense, you're going to use the input table to track this data in one place. And that makes it really easy for you to maintain, and you don't have to go on each and every table to make the changes. Creating the input table allows you to build a system that it's easy to maintain, and it's something I use with every single client of mine. If I see that the data will change a lot over time, I create an input table and I add all the information that I believe I will be needing in multiple tables and have multiple select fields. My fourth tip is to be mindful with the Airtable automations. I've had situations where I reached the limit of automations before the end of the month, and Airtable has 50,000 or 100,000 automations that you can create within Airtable, and if you reach that limit, you're not going to be able to purchase extra automations. So while having automations within Airtable is great, if you know that your business is going to scale and you have built automations within Airtable, then what happens if you're constantly scaling and you reach that limit? Those automations will stop working for some time and your workflows will be interrupted. So what I do is I consider the following. If an automation is going to consume a lot of tasks and is going to happen very often and I will need it as I scale, then I would rather use a software like Make or Zapier to build the automation there and not on Airtable, because as I told you, I've had situations I reached that limit and it was impossible for me to run the automations, and that was a really terrible experience. Now I do have a tip for you if that ever happens to you, because I also solved the problem. The way that you can solve this problem is by creating a second workspace within Airtable. So as you can see here, we have this database, but you can have multiple workspaces within one account. So here's what you can do. As you can see here, I have this account called internal workspace, and then I can create the second workspace and I can make it paid. The moment I transfer my database, this one right here, I move it to another workspace, then what I can do is run the automations. Your automations will not break if you're using Zapier or Make and you move your database to another workspace. They're going to continue to work. And now you'll have a second account where you can just put your database and run the automations because you start from zero, right? If you have a paid account on another workspace, then you can run the automations once again. But again, this is like worst case scenario. I don't think you should be relying too much on the Airtable automations, because again, you're going to reach that limit and it's going to be really hard for you to maintain the systems and not interrupt all the workflows within the company. Now let's get to my next tip. My next tip is to create a view specifically for automations. There are situations where we have built automations that rely on, for example, this view only or another view. And it could be that the user will go in and they will add some extra filters or they will hide some fields right here. Now, what you need to do is always on every single table that you create, you're going to create a view for automations. And that view will be locked and will be on a separate section. You're going to tell your users to not delete it or not touch it whatsoever. And what you're going to do there is show all the fields, remove all the filters, and also this should be the view that you're syncing with other tables on Airtable. So this way, your automations are not going to be interrupted because a user came in and added some filters or hid some fields, and then now your automation is broken and doesn't work. It is a really silly mistake to make. I've made this mistake and I don't make this mistake, of course, anymore. So just make sure you don't make the same mistake. On every table, have a view for automations, so then you can always link it to that view and you never have to go through that issue of having automations breaking. Now let's get to tip number 6. If you want to reflect information, let's say, for example, your deals, you want to show them on the client CRM, then instead of trying to duplicate it over there or populate it in 2 different tables, use a sync feature that Airtable has. For example, if I show you right here, you can go and sync data to another base. This will allow you to see this information. For example, here the booking links, it will allow you to see them on any other database. It could be like your sales database, or it could be your finance database where you want to show this information, for example. I usually use this feature if I want to see, for example, the deals, or if I want to see the calls that have been booked or the payments, and I want to show them to the sales team on their sales base. So try to use the sync feature instead of keeping data in 2 different places, because then you'll have to maintain data in different places and there's going to be some data discrepancy over time. And now my last and 7th tip is to use Lookup Fields. For example, if we're here on the client base and we can see the information like, okay, we have this onboarding form that someone filled out. Instead of creating new fields here with like the questions that someone answered on the onboarding form, I'm going to create lookup fields. So that means I'm going to see the country, I'm going to see the onboarding date or any other information that I do want to see, and I'm going to create lookup fields. So now I can see here that this person, Monek, for example, answered that they're from the Philippines. And now I don't need to track the data on the clients and the client onboarding forms table, but instead I can just create lookup fields and I can reflect the data from the onboarding form to my clients table. So guys, these are my 7 tips on Airtable. I'm sure that Airtable can help you scale your business, and this is something that I do with my team, where we come in and we streamline and systemize your business so you can scale to multiple 6 and 7 figures. You can use Airtable in so many ways, and it's very scalable for businesses that are making even 7 figures per month. It's something I have done. But you always need to have the right infrastructure and the right strategy to make sure that you're not going to hit a ceiling as you're scaling, and then you try to find for other solutions. Thank you for watching, and if you need help with your systems and automations, if you want to scale to multiple 6 and 7 figures, then check the link in the description and you can book a call with me or my team, and we can see what are the next steps for you to scale your business with systems. Thank you for watching.